Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at Iridium Communications. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests, and I most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, we already start with an interesting structure from the all-time low, where I could even go ahead and consider this to be an initial 5-wave move to the upside in the interpretation of a leading diagonal. Now, is this going to be the only possible structure? Well, no, but this is what I would prefer to track, and this would even allow me to look for an area of support for a potential correction even within a wave 2, where I would expect a third wave to follow, a fourth and a fifth to complete this larger pattern. Now, is this the only structure we could build, assuming we have a 5-wave move to the upside within this area? And unfortunately, no, this is not the case. An ABC structure could still unfold, but even within this interpretation, we would still expect to form at the very least another 5-wave move to the upside, yeah? Now, this remains a high priority, a high probability interpretation, only as long as we hold the area of support for such a correction, either a wave 2 or a wave B. For this, we have the area between the $25.6 all the way down to the $9 level. Below the 78.6% retracement, the probabilities strongly shift towards a more significant top being in place and potentially allowing us even to extend to new lows. Now, invalidation point sits at the beginning of this entire uptrend, at the beginning of the wave 1, or supposedly the wave A, and assuming we actually have a top and a bottom within the wave 2, we could be looking for some ideal targets. Now, keep in mind, this correction isn't necessarily complete. I would in fact even prefer another extension lower, but for example, for a wave 3, currently, we would be watching the level at the $540, the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 for the ideal target. Now, this is a bit of a rough estimation. It oftentimes exceeds it, but generally we would expect to reach that level to be able to reliably track a wave 4 correction in a follow-up, and then of course a fifth wave to follow. Because in the alternative that we would fail reaching that level, we would expect rather a failure or continuation within the wave 3 higher. Now, in terms of a wave C ideal target expectations, we would be watching instead the 100% extension. That is still at the $200 level. That is still nearly a 2x from the current price point. But again, I wouldn't necessarily clearly mark this correction as complete yet. So these targets would adjust if we were to form another low. And moving on, in our wave 2 correction, we can track a rather simple zigzag correction because we have an initial 5-wave move to the downside that can be considered within this push. We have an initial wave A, we are looking for a wave B correction to have formed the top here, and a wave C to complete this structure. And in this area, we also have quite an interesting signal. We will be discussing more about that in a moment. But within this wave B, we would normally expect to at least reach the area of resistance before continuing to lower prices. We did that quite nicely. We got to the 38.2% retracement. We didn't push too high into it, but we did reach the area of resistance before continuing in this downtrend. Now, also applicable for the uptrend, we don't need this area of resistance anymore, but also applicable for the uptrend is that if this is to form a wave 3, this would be expected to build an impulse. If this fails to build an impulse, I wouldn't even consider it to be a wave 3. Well, if we look here, in the smaller time frame within this wave C, we would expect to build either an ending diagonal or an impulse. Now, can the wave 3 build anything other than an impulse? Assuming we have an initial 5-wave move to the downside, well, this is not the case, which is strongly suggesting that this would be either an ABC structure that would form a more significant bottom once we have this pattern complete, or in the most bearish scenario, I would consider this to be something like a double 1-2-1-2 setup, where it technically could still fail and allow us to extend lower, but it's not going to be a high probability interpretation that would even look for, let's say, a follow-up wave 4 correction and a fifth wave to extend to lower prices, Remember, as we are looking for the ideal target for the wave 3 to be able to track a wave 4 correction and continuation higher, we would also need to form an impulse, and this applies within this smaller time frame as well. Now, within this wave C, as I was mentioning, I don't necessarily expect this larger correction to be complete. Within this wave 2, I would consider this wave C to be expected to form at least another low. And probably my preferred interpretation would consider that this is, as I mentioned, an ending diagonal. And while this is still expected to be a 5-wave pattern, it wouldn't necessarily need to form an impulse. Yeah, and in this interpretation, I'm looking still for a fourth to complete within this area and a fifth wave to complete the pattern. Now, before we actually get into the levels of resistance to track, for a signal that this structure has a more significant bottom already in place, I would also look here at the ideal target for the wave C. That is regularly at the 100% extension of the wave A. Currently, we have only gotten to the 78.6% retracement, and this is not really what is suggesting to me that we should expect continuation lower. This is oftentimes a level the wave C stops at. It is one of the common targets for the wave C. It is just not the ideal target, and the wave C is generally drawn towards the 100% extension. Sometimes it even exceeds it, but in the case of this structure, I wouldn't necessarily expect it to. Even if we form another low, I would not see it as a guarantee that we will reach the 100% extension of the wave A. We may stop at something like the 61.8% retracement, we may only form a very shallow and weak fifth wave, and of course, the market can still do whatever it wants, but these are more of the areas I would consider to find a stop within this overall correction. Yeah, maybe the 14-dot level at the 61.8% retracement, maybe we actually get to the 100% extension all the way through. Maybe we even push lower, but yeah, I wouldn't consider that necessarily likely. And we could actually even look for some structural resistance levels within this area. Do we have anything too relevant? Well, I would argue that we really don't. So we would have probably a more difficult time finding a bottom in these exact levels than normal. In the case where we did have some swing lows, some more significant bottoms to have previously formed within this area, we have kind of already used up all of these that have been more relevant. And yeah, we can notice that at these levels we have formed more significant reactions to the upside previously. Yeah, we can see these swing lows provoke more significant reactions. Now, moving on, we are talking about the area of resistance for a signal that this structure is not going to extend higher, but also the area of resistance we would normally expect to form a reversal within this fifth wave in. For this, we would be watching the levels between the $18.9 all the way up to the $25.5 level. As long as we stay below the 61.8% retracement without forming another low, I would strongly expect that we should still see an extension within this area, an extension within a fifth wave. Now remember, we are tracking an ending diagonal within this wave C, so we would normally expect to form an ABC pattern within this wave 4. At the last level of resistance, we also see some significant structural resistance as well. We see some additional indication that it would be more difficult to break through those levels. We also see here at the 50% retracement around that area more significant tops to have previously formed. Yeah, all these ideas apply in the opposite direction. Now, in terms of what we expect internally within this structure, yeah, we have here on the slightly larger time frame the area of resistance. A break above that would signal to me that a more significant bottom within the wave 2 may already be in place. But in terms of what I expect to build internally within an ABC structure, I would be looking for something like an ABC, where yeah, in the initial wave A we got rejected at the first level of resistance, and within this wave C I would be looking for a 5-wave move to the upside. Now, is this going to be the most clear structure to the upside? Well, doesn't seem to be. But within this pattern, I would probably prefer to extend a little bit higher. So in this latest push to the upside, I might even consider this to be an ABC structure within a wave 3. It could be something more bullish. Yeah, it does have the look that something more bullish may be going on and that a more significant bottom would already be in place, but I would still need the evidence of breaking the area of resistance for that. So for now, I will be tracking continuation higher against the 61.8% retracement for a possible ending diagonal to form within this area. So I'm watching the $20.1 level. Below that level, I would actually be rather prepared for a more significant top to be in place, possibly forming even a major top within this wave 4 and look for a larger continuation in the downtrend. But for now, there really isn't much else to add. I wouldn't look too much in the internal structure. We have already achieved enough within this wave 4. We have gotten to the ideal target for the wave 4 correction, the 38.2% retracement. We have pushed beyond the ideal target for a wave C within this structure. And yeah, realistically, I don't need anything to consider this correction complete. And yeah, I would be prepared for this larger wave C to continue in its trend. Now, this is not to say it cannot have a breakout. Yeah, again, I'm looking for the signal. I don't want to assume that a bottom is in place. The structure looks quite incomplete to me, and I would still prefer another low before pushing in the next wave to the upside. But for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.